welcome back to my channel. I'm just going to show you the resin cling film effect on bookmarks and coasters. So I do get the 4 coasters and 4 bookmarks ready, and I've mixed my resin, which I'm just making sure that there's no bubbles present. I do use my trusty craft resin. It's my go-to resin at the moment, unless there's any others out there that somebody can recommend. So using the cling film effect, so I've got the resin and the molds ready, but I just use a normal Tesco cling film. Any cling film would do, nothing so expensive or anything like that. Make sure your molds are all clean and clear, nothing in the gaps or the edges of the molds. And we start pouring. Now, I would advise anybody at this stage, if you're doing this, is to fill the coasters before you do the bookmarks, because I actually put a bit too much of the resin in the bookmarks, and I never thought about taking it out. So that was definitely a little error on this occasion, which bit me back in the bum later on, when I was demolding everything. So I've literally just making sure that they're all, and you can see just by looking at this video, there is slightly a little bit more resin in there than I actually wanted. So it's not filling up all the resin right the way up to the top. You need enough to be able to help create character once the cling film is added in. But it's just making sure that you aren't overflowing it, but not putting too little in as well. You do want to have a good effect. So just making sure that all the bubbles are out. However, it depends if you want to have those bubbles in as an effect. I tell you what, for some reason bubbles appeared in my final piece, which you would have seen in the thumbnail, and it definitely gave it character, and I loved it. I do normally use a heat gun. I really don't know why I picked up this on this occasion, but it did actually take the bubbles out. So yeah, so what I would advise as well is when you're doing your cling film, don't do what I've just done and just get one piece of cling film, being lazy. Individually use it. So give it a good cut up, separate it from, if you're doing 2 pieces like I have with the bookmarks to the coasters, because it was really difficult to get to the edges of my molds this way round. But once it was on, I just didn't want to just take it all off and start all over again, because resin can be really sticky and messy. And as you can see, I forgot to put my gloves on. I'm terrible with not remembering my gloves, but then again, here we go. So here I am just pinching it. Don't need to literally dig your hands in. Just let the cling film do what it needed to and give it a good little move around. I did prefer doing this with the coasters. However, I can see at this stage, you can't see it fully here, but the bookmarks were overflowing. So I have actually trimmed up the cling film for this next part, and I'd actually removed the cling film from the bookmarks because of the mess that they'd left with the overflow, because I used too much of the clear resin in them. I just thought I'd take it all off for this video, because we would have been here all day. But I did use a craft knife to help get through to the edges. And again, just making sure that they're all separate. On this stage, at the top right hand of the coasters, I'd actually pinched that a little bit too much, so I knew that was going to be a bit more of a challenge. And there I am, because the actual coasters were touching each other when I was placing the cling film, they had overflowed and stuck the molds together. But I absolutely loved the effect, and I got really excited when I'd spin that, when I turned that coaster around, because I just knew it was going to look amazing at the end. You can see here as well in this particular clip that I use a knife to go around the edges of where it had overflowed, and you can also just about see where the cling film didn't get into the edges. So here I am, all the cling film's actually been removed now, and I'm now going to be putting a dust in. I choose blue for the actual bookmark, to see how it goes. Now, I don't know what product this is or where it's come from, because these were gifted to me, but you can look at any resin suppliers for any particular dust as well. I just love the metallic look on these dusts. So this was the blue one that I chose for one of the bookmarks there for you. Making sure I get into the creases. You can feel if there's any cling film left when using a brush as well. It just makes it easier just to brush it in when it gets through to all the cracks. And you can also see a few of the air bubbles that have appeared while I was pushing those cling films in. You can just see that there's a couple. So yeah, it did add to the effect of the final product. But yeah, I don't know why I heated those to pull out the bubbles, because it did actually make a really good effect. So what I wanted to do with the coasters, I wanted to get kind of like a galaxy type feel for it. So I did go for the blue, the grey, and like a lilac-y pink colour, and I did actually just go out, go to town with it. Put loads on, mix the colours in, kind of got a bit arty with it. Like I was doing a painting, but I just literally just went for it. And again, you could see that the air bubbles within this coaster proper held the powder. You can just see within it, and it did act like an amazing effect once the top layer of the resin actually went in. There's me pulling out a bit more cling film. Again, the brush does give you that extra step, an extra, you can feel it when there's cling film in there. Again, I can highlight where the cling film didn't actually go into the corners, and this is why I probably would advise to actually separate and not use a whole single piece when you're actually placing the cling film on top of the resin to set. So I do all 4 of these coasters in this effect. So I'll go around the whole lot, and just making sure that there's a mix of the 3 colours, which was absolutely fine. And I used separate brushes as well, so I didn't get mix the different powders in the separate pots. I did use gold, and I did use the silver, and I used the lilac all on its own for the actual bookmarks. So now it's all about getting that top layer of the resin in there for you. Now I did use acrylic paint to be able to darken my bottom layer, and I've got my 2 silicone molds. I've already poured out the actual main part of the resin. I thought I'd have enough of the resin to be able to do all the top layers of these, but it didn't turn out the way I planned. So yes, so we used dark, like iridescent acrylic paint for the coasters, and I used black for the bookmarks. Now the bookmarks didn't actually go to the plan that I wanted. The reason for that is because I put too much of that clear resin right at the beginning before the cling film went on. So it was very, very, very little amount to fill. But then again, resin is self-leveling, and it did add to a good effect. However, there was a lot of final work on these with the trimming and the tidying up and the filing on the bookmarks. Again, I don't know why I did this, but I've stuck all of them all together again. All the molds are touching. I would advise not to touch them, because if there's any resin that does overflow, it does stick, and you're going to end up with a lot more work to do at the end. However, I did notice this. So I did pour the bookmarks first. Now this was with the black finish. And as you can see, it does self-level a bit, and now I do give it a bit of a push though. And it does fill into those holes. So where the air bubbles were and the holes have been left, these do fall down into it. And I was so excited with the final result of these, but it was a very, very difficult one for me, especially with not doing this before and sticking it straight on record without even doing it first. I literally can show you what can go wrong, and this went wrong. But you know what? It turned out all right in the end. And this is where you'll see that the resin is touching each other on each of the molds, and I just wanted to separate them. I wanted to deal with it individually at the end once the resin had cured. So definitely, if you're doing this yourself, separate them, and don't go too deep with your first clear resin layer. So here we go. I am pouring the blue iridescent bottom layer in the coasters. Now, I definitely didn't pour out enough and measure out enough resin for this. Definitely needed a lot more. So I literally pinched the black that was left over from the bookmarks to then complete for the coasters. Again, I still didn't have enough, so I had to fill a final coaster off screen, off camera. It did stop recording, but it was fun. Definitely a learning curve. Just make sure you've got enough resin poured, and then if you've got an overflow of resin, just make sure you've got smaller molds. I'd rather overdo the resin than underdo. So here I'm just making sure all the air bubbles are out. This is the top, well, say the top. It looks the top, but it's the bottom layer, and I don't want to be having air bubbles or any sharp edges once this is complete, because this is the finished part of the coasters. So I do that off screen, as you can see. So I'm here ready to demold. I've already demolded one off screen because I was so excited I forgot to press record. And I do have a little helper with me on this one because I was so impatient. I didn't wait 24 hours to demold these. It was more like 13 hours. So they were still quite not hard enough. But this was amazing. I am so pleased at the fact that this is the first time I've done this effect with the cling film, and literally just going for it with the recording as well. I go around just breaking the edge a little bit because I don't want to touch that top, because I didn't want to have thumbprints or catch it in any way, because again, I was so impatient and so excited. I couldn't wait to see the result of this. Me trying to make sure that everything's clear underneath so it doesn't damage the underneath of that coaster. And oh my god, look at those bubbles. They were so good. Now I could have kept the original audio to this because you would have heard the excitement from my daughter Bella as well. But again, with the overflow there, I would just be trimming that up with a craft knife and a file. But yeah, this was one exciting moment. Bella so wanted to get involved with the demoulding. I haven't even sped this up, so it's not on a time lapse. This is in true time, and it is so I absolutely love these. And with it being resin and with it being cling film, each one of them are so unique and individual. You wouldn't get one the same. And that little point that I was pointing out there is where I scrunched it in the corner and the cling film did stick a little bit, but I did manage to get them all out in the end. But it just looks like material, like a satin. I would love to try this with so many different colours. You can see that the bookmarks, and they're just not fully cured, and I'm just impatient that the coaster and the bookmark stuck then. But even with the dust as well, because of resin, and the science behind it, it just does. Even the bottom looked amazing. I was so happy with both the bottom and the top of the coasters. Yes, just amazing. And again, you can see the effect of what happens when you just use a single piece of cling film and you can't get to the edges. You do get that flat part of that. So yeah, so the bookmarks I did individually in different colours. I did want to make sure you're just get an idea of what it would look like. Again, with the overflow of this, it's blocked out the hole where you would put in the tassel. So again, I would have had to get the knife out, a little screw hole just to bring it back again. It did take a lot more time to get these to finish, but amazing. This is probably my favourite colour, although the gold one, it was amazing, the bookmarks. I was blown away. Considering that I put too much in, they did turn out the way that I wanted them in the end. So yeah, Bella's getting all excited here that she wants to actually demold it. So what I wanted to do, because they weren't fully cured, I allowed her to pull the top mould off. But I really wish I'd kept the original audio, because we both were like, look at come? And she was trying to think, oh, I want this one, I want that one, and she just kept changing her mind. And this, you can see where the build-up of the silver dust had built up within the resin, within the top layer of the resin. I just love both sides of these. They're amazing, but these had the biggest air bubbles, this one. And look at the effect. Oh, it's so good. And yeah, both me and Bella was so happy with this. Really, really, if anyone wants to do the cling film effect, by all means do it, but don't do what I did with the putting too much resin in the molds and too much and using a single piece for all of your molds. But that's them. I am absolutely amazed and so pleased with how they've turned out. I don't know what it would look like if I'd waited 24 hours, but that's with the hole put in. I still got a lot more trimming to do, and these are the final coasters. But thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.